Welcome to Night Whisper. Night Whisper brings you the darkest tales from the shadows. Join our community. Subscribe, leave a like, and prepare yourself for stories that will haunt your dreams. When I drove my rented Jeep into the entrance of the Canyon Ridge Reserve, my vehicle kicked up the red dust on the ground. On the third day of my decision to cross the entire country from one end to the other, my equipment and camera bag looked like they had been through a real battle. I was photographing the wildlife living in America's lesser-known reserves for Wilderness Today magazine. They were the kind of places that don't make it onto postcards, but should. Afternoon? The ranger at the booth barely looked up from her clipboard. She was maybe 50, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that had seen too many summers out here. Her name tag read, Martinez. Cole Marin. I have a permit for wildlife photography. I handed her my paperwork through the window. She scanned it, then looked at me properly for the first time. Her expression shifted just slightly. You staying overnight? 3 nights. Got a spot reserved at the Ridgepoint campground. Martinez held my papers a moment longer than necessary. Stick to marked trails. Don't wander after dark. She paused, her jaw working like she wanted to say more. And if something calls your name out there, you didn't hear it. I laughed, thinking it was some kind of local humor. Right. Don't talk to strangers. I'm serious. She handed back my permit, and I saw she wasn't smiling. Things echo strange in these canyons. Your mind plays tricks. Don't answer voices you can't see. The way she said it killed my laugh. I nodded, suddenly very aware of how empty the parking lot was behind me. Understood. She waved me through, and I caught her in my rearview mirror, watching my Jeep until I rounded the first bend. Canyon Ridge sprawled across 70,000 acres of Arizona backcountry. Red rock formations thrust up from scrubland like ancient monuments, and the air tasted like dust and juniper. I'd researched the area extensively. Mountain lions, coyotes, rattlesnakes, standard desert predators. Nothing that should make a ranger look at me like I was driving into a war zone. I set up camp at Ridgepoint as the sun began its descent. My tent faced east, away from the sunset, which meant I was watching shadows lengthen across the canyon floor. Already, in that fading light, the rock formations looked less like geological features and more like watching figures. Stop it, I told myself. Martinez had gotten in my head. I spent the last hour of daylight checking my camera gear. 2 bodies, 6 lenses, extra batteries, memory cards. Everything I needed to capture whatever moved in this desert. My specialty was behavioral wildlife photography. Animals in their natural element, unposed, unaware of the camera. It required patience and silence. Skills I'd learned from my dad before he disappeared. I pushed the thought away and focused on my shot list. Dawn at the canyon rim. Midday wildlife near the water source. Sunset from the overlook. Standard stuff, but Wilderness Today paid well for quality work. As darkness fell completely, I fired up my camp stove and heated a can of beans. The temperature dropped fast out here, and I pulled on a jacket. In the distance, a coyote called. Then another answered. Normal desert sounds, nothing to worry about. Except the third call didn't sound quite right. I paused, spoon halfway to my mouth, listening. The first 2 calls had that classic coyote yip howl, rising and falling in pitch. The third call started the same way, but ended wrong. Too long. Too even. Almost like someone imitating a coyote without understanding how the sound should break. The hair on my neck stood up. I sat there in the glow of my camping lantern, listening to the night. Minutes passed. No more calls. Just wind moving through the canyon and the distant rustle of small animals in the brush. I finished my beans and told myself I was being paranoid, but I checked the zipper on my tent twice before I crawled into my sleeping bag. Something woke me at 2:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I grabbed my phone immediately, some instinct screaming that I needed to know. The tent was pitch black. Outside, complete silence. Not even wind. That's what had woken me. The silence. Deserts are never truly quiet. There's always something moving, hunting, fleeing. But right now, it was like someone had hit mute on the entire canyon. I lay there, barely breathing, listening to nothing. Then I heard footsteps. Not paws, not hooves. Footsteps, two-legged, crunching on the gravel around my campsite. Slow, deliberate, circling my tent. My heart hammered so hard I thought whoever was out there could probably hear it. I reached for the knife I kept in my boot, but my hands were shaking too badly to grip it properly. The footsteps continued, just outside the tent wall. I could see a shadow moving across the moonlit fabric. "Hello?" My voice came out as a whisper. The footsteps stopped. I immediately regretted speaking. Martinez's warning echoed in my head. Don't answer voices you can't see. But I hadn't answered a voice. I'd made the first sound. That had to be different, right? "Is someone there?" I tried again, louder this time. Silence. Then, in a perfect mimicry of my own voice, something outside my tent said, "Is someone there?" Ice flooded my veins. That was my voice, my exact tone, my cadence, even the slight crack of fear in it. Like someone had recorded me and played it back. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't make a sound. The shadow shifted, and I heard it clearly now. The sound of 2 feet walking around my tent again. Not exploring, not searching, just walking in a slow circle, over and over. And with each pass, that thing spoke in my voice. "Is someone there? Is someone there? Is someone there?" Over and over, my own voice asking my own question, while something that shouldn't exist circled my tent like a shark. I don't know how long it lasted. Could have been minutes, could have been hours. Time lost meaning in that darkness, listening to myself outside my tent. Eventually, slowly, the footsteps moved away. Gravel crunched in the distance. Then, further still. Then, nothing. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat in my sleeping bag with my knife in one hand and my phone's flashlight in the other, watching the tent walls until sunrise. The morning light revealed nothing. No footprints around my tent except my own from the night before. No disturbed gravel, no signs anyone or anything had been there. I walked the entire perimeter 3 times, checking every inch. Nothing. But I knew what I'd heard. I packed up camp in record time, threw everything in the Jeep, and was heading for the exit by 7 a.m. The 3-day permit could go to hell. I wasn't spending another night here. Martinez was at the booth again. She took one look at my face and knew. "You heard it," she said. Not a question. "I don't know," I started, but she cut me off. "Something circled your tent, used your voice. You heard yourself outside." She crossed her arms, leaning against the booth. "Happens to about 1 in every 20 campers. Most don't come back." "What the hell was it?" She shook her head. "Don't know. Don't want to know. Been working this reserve for 16 years, and I've learned not to ask questions. Things live out there that don't follow normal rules. They can't leave the reserve boundaries. We know that much. But inside?" She gestured at the vast emptiness behind me. "Inside, they can do what they want. Why doesn't anyone close this place down?" "Because 95% of visitors never see anything. It's random. Or maybe not random. Maybe they choose. Either way, parks don't close because of stories." I stared at her. "My dad was a ranger, Samuel Marin. Did you ever—" Her expression changed instantly. "You're Sam's boy? You knew him?" Martinez looked away, and I saw something like grief cross her face. Every ranger in the system knew about Sam, what he did at Mammoth, the fact that he— She paused. "You should talk to Rufus Hale. He worked with your father. He's retired now, but he might answer questions." I can't." She wrote a phone number on the back of my permit. "Tell him Martinez gave you this." "And Cole?" She met my eyes. "Your dad disappeared for a reason. Maybe it's better if you don't follow him." I drove 12 hours straight to Cascade Forest Reserve in Washington State. My next assignment wasn't for another week, but I couldn't get Martinez's words out of my head. More than that, I couldn't get the sound of my own voice out of my head, circling my tent in the darkness. Cascade Forest was the opposite of Arizona. Towering evergreens, moss-covered everything, an air so thick with moisture it felt like breathing underwater. I pulled into the reserve at dusk, and the ranger station was closed. A sign directed overnight visitors to self-register at the trailhead kiosks. I found the Whispering Pine Trail and filled out my permit in the fading light. According to the map, a ranger cabin sat 3 miles in, available for emergency shelter. I grabbed my camera bag and a light pack and started hiking. The trail wound through old-growth forest so dense that twilight turned to darkness within minutes. My flashlight beam cut through the gloom, illuminating huge trunks and hanging moss that looked like something out of a fairy tale. The air was silent except for my footsteps on the soft earth. Then I heard the crying. A child, young, maybe 5 or 6 years old, sobbing in the darkness somewhere to my left off the trail. My first instinct was to help. Some kid was lost out here. But then Martinez's warning came back. Don't answer voices you can't see. I stopped walking and listened carefully. The crying continued, steady and pitiful. But something about it was off. The sobs were too regular, too unchanging. Real crying has rhythm, variations. This was like a loop. "Hello?" I called out anyway. I couldn't just ignore a kid in distress, warning or not. "Are you okay?" The crying stopped instantly. Total silence. Then, from the same spot in the darkness, that child's voice said, "Hello? Are you okay?" My stomach dropped. Same inflection. Same concern. My exact words. I backed away slowly, keeping my flashlight pointed toward the voice. For just a second, my beam caught something pale moving between the trees, something tall and wrong, hunching down, trying to look small. I ran. The trail blurred beneath my feet as I sprinted through the darkness, my flashlight jerking wildly. Behind me, I heard crashing through the undergrowth, something big, keeping pace, and that child's voice, still calling out in my words. "Hello? Are you okay? Hello? Are you okay?" The ranger cabin appeared suddenly, a small wooden structure with a covered porch. I didn't slow down. I hit the door at full speed, praying it wasn't locked. It swung open, and I threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. I fumbled for a lock and found a heavy deadbolt. I threw it just as something hit the other side of the door. The impact rattled the frame, but the bolt held. Silence. I pressed my back against the wall, trying to catch my breath. The cabin was small, one room with a cot, a cold fireplace, and a single window. I checked the window immediately. Locked. Good. Then I saw the face, pressed against the glass, staring in at me. But it wasn't a face. Not really. It had all the parts, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, but they were arranged slightly wrong. The eyes too far apart, the mouth too wide, and the skin wasn't skin. It was something pale and smooth, like wet clay. We stared at each other through the glass. The thing's mouth moved, and I heard my voice again, muffled through the window. "Are you okay?" I grabbed the curtain and yanked it closed, blocking the view. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my flashlight. Something scraped at the door, then at the window, then back at the door. It was testing the cabin, looking for a way in. I grabbed the cot and dragged it against the door as a barricade. Then I found a fire poker and held it like a weapon. The scraping continued for hours, sometimes at the door, sometimes at the window. Once, horribly, I heard something on the roof, walking back and forth. And through it all, that voice, my voice, asking over and over, "Are you okay?" I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and the fire poker across my lap, waiting for dawn. When the first gray light filtered through the curtain, the noises stopped. I waited another hour before I dared look outside. The morning forest was empty. Beautiful even, like nothing had happened. But on the window, pressed into the condensation, was a handprint. Each finger was too long, and there were too many of them. I called Rufus Hale from my car before I even left the Cascade Forest parking lot. He answered on the third ring, and his voice was exactly what I expected from a retired ranger, rough as gravel, tired, and instantly wary. "Martinez gave me your number," I said. "I'm Cole Marin, Samuel Marin's son." A long pause. "I figured you'd call eventually. Things started happening, didn't they?" "How did you know?" "Because they always do. Your dad had a gift, if you can call it that. He could see them more clearly than most people, and they knew it. After Mammoth," Hale trailed off. "They've been looking for him ever since. They can't leave the reserves, so they can't hunt him down." "But his son? That's the next best thing." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. "What are they?" "Don't know. Your dad and I spent 20 years trying to figure that out. Best we could determine is that they're old. Really old. They were here before the reserves, before the parks. When the government started protecting these lands, they didn't just preserve nature. They trapped these things inside, locked them in with legal boundaries they can't cross. That's impossible." "Yeah, well, so is hearing your own voice outside your tent." Hale sighed. "Look, I'm in Colorado. If you want answers, come see me. But I'm warning you now, the more you look into this, the more they notice you. And they don't forget. I need to know what happened to my dad." "I figured you'd say that too. I'll text you my address. Drive safe, Cole. And when you're crossing through reserves?" He paused. "Don't stop for anything." The call ended. 2 minutes later, a text arrived with an address in Boulder and 5 words. "They're watching for you now." Rufus Hale lived in a cabin outside Boulder that looked like it had been airlifted straight from a reserve. Wooden everything, solar panels on the roof, and enough distance from his neighbors that screaming wouldn't carry. He met me on the porch with a shotgun in one hand and a beer in the other. "You look like your old man," he said by way of greeting. "Same damn stubborn look in your eyes, too." "Nice to meet you, too." He grunted and stepped aside to let me in. The cabin's interior matched the exterior, functional, minimal, and covered in maps. Every wall had topographical charts of various reserves, some marked with red pins, others with handwritten notes. "Every pin is an incident," Hale explained, following my gaze. "Sightings, disappearances, encounters. Your dad and I tracked them for years, started noticing patterns." I stepped closer to a map of Mammoth Cave. A cluster of red pins marked one specific area, with dates written next to each. Martinez mentioned Mammoth, said every ranger knew what my dad did there. Hale set down his beer and crossed his arms. "Your dad killed one. Only person who ever has, far as we know. It came at him underground, and he dragged it, literally dragged it, fighting and screaming, across the reserve boundary. Soon as it crossed that line, it died. Withered up like a flower and fast forward. So they can't leave. Ever." "Right, but here's what keeps me up at night." Hale pointed to different maps around the room. "There are hundreds of these things, maybe thousands, trapped in reserves all across the country. And they're getting bolder. Frequency of encounters has tripled in the last decade. It's like they're testing the boundaries, looking for weaknesses." I thought about the things circling my tent, using my voice. Why do they mimic us? Best theory? They're trying to understand us. They copy voices, appearances, behaviors, like children learning language. Except they're not children, and we're not teaching them. They're hunting. Hale pulled out a worn notebook and flipped through pages covered in cramped handwriting. Your dad thought they might have been human once, long ago. Something happened to them, changed them. Now they're trapped between what they were and what they've become. That's why they look almost right, but not quite. Exactly. They remember the shape, but not the details. He stopped on a page with a sketch, a humanoid figure with too many joints, too long fingers. Your dad drew this after Mammoth. He got a real good look at the one that came after him. Said its eyes were the worst part. Human eyes, but wrong. Like something else was looking through them. I stared at the sketch, and a chill ran through me. I'd seen eyes like that. At the Cascade cabin window, staring in at me. "What happened to my dad?" I asked quietly. Martinez said he disappeared. Hale closed the notebook. 3 years ago, Sam got a call about a situation at Yosemite. A family stranded in the backcountry, similar to what happened to you in Arizona. He went in to help extract them, and he never came out. Rangers searched for weeks, found nothing. Not his gear, not his body, nothing. But if those things can't leave the reserves, he's still in there, Hale finished grimly. Question is whether he's alive, and if he is, whether he's still him. The implications hit me like a freight train. My dad, trapped in a reserve for 3 years with those things. What would that do to a person? "I need to find him," I said. "I figured you'd say that, which is why I'm going to tell you something I probably shouldn't." Hale moved to a filing cabinet and pulled out a folder. "Your dad wasn't just a ranger. He was part of a special unit within the Park Service. We called it Boundary Patrol. Our job was to deal with situations the normal rangers couldn't handle. After Mammoth, Sam became the expert, the one they called when things went really wrong." He handed me the folder. Inside were incident reports, photographs, maps, all stamped with "restricted" in red letters. "The Park Service denies this unit ever existed," Hale continued. "Officially, we were just rangers who happened to handle unusual situations. Unofficially, we were the only thing standing between these creatures and the public. We logged every encounter, every sighting, every rule we learned about them." I flipped through the reports. Each one described something impossible, entities that shouldn't exist, behaving in ways that defied explanation. But they all followed certain rules. "They can't cross boundaries," I read aloud. "They can't enter ranger structures. They're most active at dawn and dusk. They avoid fire. They mimic but can't create. They can only copy what they've heard or seen." Right. Learn those rules, and you might survive. Forget them. And Hale gestured at a report. "Well, you see what happens." The report he indicated described a hiker at Isle North Waters Reserve who'd followed a voice calling for help. Search teams found his camera 3 days later, still recording. The footage showed him walking deeper into the forest, following what sounded like his wife calling his name. The video ended when he walked off a cliff. "But here's the thing," Hale said. "Your dad thought there might be a way to communicate with them. He'd been studying their behavior patterns, their mimicry. He believed they were trying to tell us something, not just hunt us. That's what he was investigating when he disappeared." "Do you think he's right?" Hale was quiet for a long moment. "I think your dad was the smartest man I ever worked with. And I think he walked into Yosemite knowing exactly how dangerous it was. So either he found what he was looking for or..." He didn't finish. I closed the folder. "I have assignments at Kodiak Highlands and Isle North Waters over the next 2 weeks. After that, I'm going to Yosemite." "Figured you'd say that too." Hale grabbed his beer and took a long drink. "All right, if you're going to do this, we're going to do it right. I'm coming with you to Kodiak and Isle. Consider it training. If you can survive those, maybe, you'll be ready for Yosemite." "Why would you help me?" "Because your dad saved my life at Mammoth, and because I should have gone into Yosemite 3 years ago instead of letting him go alone." Hale met my eyes, and I saw the guilt there, heavy and old. "I won't make that mistake twice." Kodiak Highlands Reserve sprawled across northern Montana, all rolling hills and dense pine forests. Hale drove separately in his old pickup truck, and we met at the ranger station at noon. The ranger on duty, a young guy named Patterson, who couldn't have been more than 25, barely glanced at our permits. "You boys be careful out there," he said, already looking back at his phone. "Bear activity's been high." "We'll keep our food secure," I assured him. Patterson looked up then, really looked at me, and something in his expression changed. "You look familiar. Have you been here before?" "First time." "Huh." He studied my face another moment, then shrugged. "Must be thinking of someone else. Enjoy your trip." But as we walked away, I caught him making a phone call, glancing in our direction. Hale noticed too. "They're getting better at recognizing Sam's bloodline," he muttered. "Word travels fast in the Ranger network." We hiked 3 miles to a designated camping area near a lake. The plan was simple: set up camp, wait until dusk, and see what happened. Hale had brought equipment I'd never seen before: motion sensors, infrared cameras, even some kind of audio recorder that looked military grade. "Your dad and I developed protocols," he explained, setting up sensors around our camp. "These things avoid technology sometimes, but they're curious about it other times. Depends on the individual entity, we think." "Individual? Like they have personalities?" "Seems that way. Some are aggressive, some just watch, some try to communicate." He positioned the last sensor. "The one your dad killed at Mammoth? That was aggressive. It went after a child. Sam didn't have a choice." The sun began to set, painting the lake gold and red. We ate dinner in silence, both of us watching the tree line. As darkness fell, Hale activated his equipment, and we settled in to wait. Nothing happened for the first 2 hours. Then, at 9:47 p.m., according to my watch, the motion sensors triggered. All of them, simultaneously, in a perfect circle around our camp. "That's not normal," Hale said softly. "Animals trigger them one at a time. This is coordinated." We sat back to back, each watching half the forest. I had my camera ready, switched to night mode. If I was going to die, I was at least going to document it. Then we heard the footsteps, not just from one direction, from all directions. They were circling us, just like the thing had circled my tent in Arizona. But this time there were multiple entities, all moving in perfect synchronization. "They're learning," Hale whispered. "Adapting. This is new behavior." A voice called out from the darkness, my dad's voice. "Rufus, is that you?" Every muscle in my body locked up. Hale went rigid beside me. "Rufus, I need help. I'm hurt." The voice sounded exactly like I imagined my dad would sound. I'd only been 8 when he disappeared. But Hale had known him for 20 years, and the look on his face said this was a perfect imitation. "Don't answer," Hale breathed. "Rule 1. Rufus, please. It's Sam. I'm right here." The footsteps stopped. The forest went silent. Then, slowly, a figure emerged from the tree line. It walked upright, human-shaped, wearing what looked like a ranger uniform. In the darkness, it could have been anyone. But the way it moved was wrong. Too smooth, too gliding, like its feet weren't quite touching the ground. "Rufus?" it said again, and the voice cracked with emotion. "I've been trapped here for 3 years. I finally found a way out. Please, help me." I raised my camera and looked through the night vision scope. What I saw made my blood freeze. The figure had my dad's general shape and size. It wore a ranger uniform that looked weathered and torn, but its face was blank, smooth as clay, with indentations where features should be. As I watched, those indentations began to shift and mold, like someone sculpting from the inside out. Eyes formed, a nose, a mouth. It was building my dad's face from memory. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. The thing's head snapped toward me, and its half-formed face smiled. Then it spoke in my dad's voice. Cole? Is that you, son? Every instinct screamed at me to run to that figure, to believe it was really him, but I'd seen how it formed its face. I'd seen the blankness underneath. That's not your father, Hale said quietly. Sam's eyes were brown. That thing's eyes are yellow. He was right. In my camera scope, I could see the entity's eyes reflecting the infrared light, animal eyes, not human. More figures emerged from the tree line. 4, 5, 6 of them, all humanoid, all wearing variations of ranger uniforms or hiking gear, all with half-formed faces, trying and failing to look completely human. They surrounded our camp but didn't cross into it. The motion sensors marked an invisible barrier, and they wouldn't cross it. The sensors, I realized. They're respecting the boundary we set. They respect boundaries, Hale confirmed. It's their nature. They can't help it. Even the invisible ones. The entities stood there, watching us, waiting. Then, in perfect unison, they all spoke with my dad's voice. Cole, come home. It wasn't a request. It was a command. And for a second, just a second, I almost obeyed. The pull was physical, like someone had a rope around my chest, tugging me toward those figures. Hale grabbed my arm. Fight it! They're getting stronger, using emotional manipulation now. I tore my eyes away from the entities and focused on the fire between us. The flames, real, natural, human. I concentrated on that reality, pushing away the unnatural pull. The entities watched a moment longer. Then, slowly, they retreated into the forest. The motion sensors went dark. We didn't sleep that night. At dawn, I checked my camera's footage. I'd captured everything, the entities emerging, their faces forming, the moment they spoke in unison. But when I played the audio back, there was only static where their voices should have been. They don't record well, Hale explained. Your dad noticed that too. Like, they exist slightly out of phase with normal reality. We broke camp in silence and hiked back to our vehicles. Patterson was at the ranger station again, and he watched us drive away with an expression I couldn't read. Concern? Fear? Warning? Next stop is Isle North Waters, Hale said as we stood by our cars. That one's going to be worse. It's on an island, which means limited escape routes, but you need to see it. Need to understand what you're walking into at Yosemite. I nodded, still shaking from the night before. When do we leave? Tomorrow. And Cole? Hale's expression was grim. What you saw last night with your dad's voice? That was them testing you. They know who you are now. They know what you want, and they're going to use that against you. Isle North Waters Reserve sat 20 miles off the Michigan coast in Lake Superior. The only way in was by boat, and the only boats allowed were government vessels. Hale had called in a favor with a ranger named Davidson, who agreed to take us out despite the approaching storm. Should have known better, Davidson muttered as we loaded our gear. The old-timers say bad things happen when you go to the island this time of year. What kind of bad things? I asked. The kind where people don't come back. He gunned the engine, and we headed into increasingly rough water. The island appeared through the rain like something from another world. Dense forests covered every inch except for a small dock and a single ranger station. No tourists, no campers, just wilderness and whatever lived there. Nobody's allowed on the island past October, Davidson shouted over the wind. But 3 hikers thought the rules didn't apply to them. They've been stranded on the North Shore for 2 days. Something won't let them leave. Why can't you just extract them? I shouted back. Davidson and Hale exchanged a look. Because every ranger who tries to get them ends up trapped too. We've lost contact with 2 teams already. They're alive, we think, but they won't cross the beach to the boats. It's like something's holding them there. We docked at the main station and 3 rangers met us. They looked exhausted, frightened. One of them, a woman named Chen, grabbed Hale's arm the moment he stepped off the boat. "Rufus, thank God. We didn't know who else to call. Whatever's on that North Shore, it's not like anything in the protocols." Hale nodded grimly. "Show us." We hiked through the forest as the storm worsened. The trees here were different from anywhere else I'd been. Twisted, ancient, their branches forming canopies that blocked most of the daylight. It felt like walking through a cathedral designed by something that hated humans. After an hour, we reached a ridge overlooking the North Shore. Below us, I could see the hikers, 3 figures huddled on the beach. But they weren't alone. Surrounding them in the water were shapes. Dozens of them, just beneath the surface, circling slowly like sharks. "What the hell are those?" I raised my camera, zooming in. Through my lens, I saw them clearly. They were humanoid, but aquatic, pale, smooth skin, webbed fingers, faces that were almost human, but stretched wrong. And their eyes. God, their eyes were massive, taking up half their faces, reflective and ancient. "Water entities," Chen said quietly. "We've had reports of them for decades, but they usually stay in the deep water. This is the first time they've actively prevented people from leaving." "They're adapting," Hale said, "learning to work together. They've figured out they can't hurt people directly, but they can trap them. Keep them on land until—" He didn't finish. "Until what?" I asked. "Until someone goes in the water to save them. Then they can interact." One of the stranded hikers spotted us on the ridge and started waving frantically. His shouts carried up the beach. "Help! Please! They've been in the water for 2 days." 2 days? I looked at Hale. "In Lake Superior? They should be dead from hypothermia." "They should be," Chen confirmed. "But look." I zoomed in on the entities. They were keeping the hikers alive somehow, splashing water on them, making sure they stayed conscious. They wanted the hikers alive and aware. "It's a trap," Hale said. "They're bait. Those things want someone to attempt a rescue." "So what do we do? Leave them there?" "No." Hale pulled off his jacket. "We use the one advantage we have. Those things can't leave the water. The reserve boundary extends to the waterline, but not onto the beach. If we can get those hikers to run, really run, we can extract them." "And what about the entities? They'll try to pull whoever goes in." Hale looked at me steadily. "That's why you're not going in. I am. You're going to document this, and if something happens to me, you're going to take that documentation and finish what your dad started. Rufus? Non-negotiable, kid. Your dad would have done the same thing, and you know it." He turned to Chen. "I need a waterproof rope and a rescue harness, and someone with a damn steady aim on the shore with a rifle." 20 minutes later, we'd assembled a rescue team. Hale would swim out with a rope, get a harness on the hikers, and we'd pull them to shore. Simple in theory, suicidal in practice. But as Hale waded into the water, something unexpected happened. The entities retreated. All of them, simultaneously. They sank deeper into the lake, leaving the area around the hikers clear. It was like they'd been called back by some invisible signal. "What the hell?" Chen lowered her rifle, confused. Hale stopped waist-deep in the water, equally puzzled. Then he turned back to us, and his expression changed from confusion to horror. "It's not me they want," he shouted. "It's—" Something grabbed my ankle. I looked down to see a pale hand emerging from the ground, not the water, the ground, wrapped around my boot. I screamed and tried to pull away, but the grip was iron. More hands erupted from the earth around me, dozens of them, all pulling me down. "They're underground," Chen yelled. "They tunneled under the beach." I fell hard, my camera flying from my hands. The beach around me opened up like quicksand, and I felt myself sinking. Hands pulled at my clothes, my arms, my hair. I tried to scream, but dirt filled my mouth. Then Hale was there, back on shore, hauling me up with strength that shouldn't have existed in a man his age. The other rangers grabbed me too, and together they pulled me away from the collapsing beach. The moment we crossed back into the tree line, the hands released. I lay there gasping, spitting out dirt, while Hale checked me for injuries. "New behavior," he panted. "They've never done that before. They're learning, adapting faster than we thought." "The hikers," I managed to say. We looked back at the beach. The 3 stranded people were gone. No signs of struggle, no screams. Just empty sand and the lake beyond, now perfectly calm. "They took them underground," Chen whispered. "Oh God, they took them underground." We searched until dark, but found no trace of the hikers. The beach had solidified again, showing no signs of the collapse. It was like it never happened. Davidson refused to stay overnight. "We're leaving, now. If we stay, we're dead." Nobody argued. We hiked back to the dock in silence, and I kept expecting hands to burst from the ground with every step. But we made it to the boat, and Davidson got us away from the island at full speed. As we crossed back into open water, I looked back at Isle North waters. In the fading light, I could see figures on the shore. Dozens of them, watching us leave. Some were the aquatic entities from the water. Others were the underground ones. And in the center, taller than the rest, stood one that looked almost completely human. I raised my camera, zooming in on that central figure. Through the lens, I saw it clearly. It was wearing a ranger uniform. It had my dad's face, not a half-formed approximation, but a perfect copy. And it was smiling. Then it raised one hand and waved, not a threatening gesture, a greeting, or maybe a promise. I lowered my camera, and Hale saw my expression. "What?" "They have his face. They perfected it." Hale looked back at the island, and his jaw tightened. Then, "Yosemite is a trap. Has been from the beginning. They've been waiting 3 years for you to come looking for him." "I'm still going." "I know. That's why I'm going with you." We spent 2 weeks preparing. Hale taught me every protocol, every rule, every survival strategy he and my dad had developed. I learned to recognize the signs of entities nearby. I learned which sounds were natural and which were mimicry. I learned how to fight the psychological pull they exerted. Most importantly, I learned how my dad had killed the entity at Mammoth. "It's not about strength," Hale explained. "It's about willpower. Your dad believed, really believed, that he could drag that thing across the boundary. And somehow, that belief gave him the strength to do it. It's like faith in reverse. He had faith in the rules they couldn't break, and that faith became real." That doesn't make sense. None of this makes sense, Cole. We're dealing with entities that exist partially outside normal reality. They follow rules that shouldn't exist. Maybe belief is just as real as physics in their world. On a cold November morning, we drove into Yosemite. The park was officially closed for the season, but Hale's ranger credentials got us through the gate. The woman at the entrance, an older ranger named Morrison, looked at me the same way Martinez had at Canyon Ridge. "You're Sam's boy," she said. Not a question. "Yes, ma'am. Echo Cabin is 3 miles in. That's where they found his gear." She handed me a key. The cabin's still standing, and it's still safe. "But son, don't leave it after dark. Don't answer voices. And don't trust anything that looks like your father." "I'll be careful." She shook her head sadly. That's what he said too. The hike to Echo Cabin took 2 hours through some of the most beautiful wilderness I'd ever seen. Yosemite in winter was pristine, untouched, almost magical. But I couldn't appreciate it. Every shadow looked like an entity. Every sound could be mimicry. The cabin appeared suddenly, a small wooden structure with a stone chimney nestled against a cliff face. It looked exactly like something my dad would have chosen, defensible, with one entrance, one window, and a clear view of the approaches. We set up equipment around the perimeter, similar to Kodiak but more extensive. Hale had brought everything: motion sensors, cameras, audio recorders, even a satellite phone in case we needed emergency extraction. "If things go wrong," he said, "you run. Don't try to be a hero. Get to the boundary and cross it. The rules protect you outside the park." "What about you?" "I'm old, kid. I've had a good run. Your dad saved my life, and this is me returning the favor to his son." He met my eyes. "Besides, I'm tired. Tired of fighting these things, tired of seeing people disappear. If I go out here, at least it's on my terms." "Rufus, promise me, Cole. Promise you'll run if you have to." I didn't want to promise, but looking at his lined face, at the determination there, I nodded. "I promise." As the sun began to set, we made dinner and settled in. The cabin had a generator, and Hale got it running. Electric lights blazed from the windows, a beacon in the wilderness. Bait. "They'll come," Hale said. "Question is when and how many." We didn't have to wait long. At 8:17 p.m., the motion sensors triggered. All of them, just like at Kodiak. But this time, they stayed active. Whatever was out there wasn't just passing through, it was staying. I looked out the window and saw them. Dozens of entities emerging from the forest, forming a circle around the cabin. They were all humanoid, all wearing various approximations of hiking gear or ranger uniforms. And they were all perfectly still, just watching. "They're waiting," Hale whispered. "But for what?" The answer came from the darkness beyond the entities, a voice, clear and strong, calling out, "Cole, it's time to come home." My dad's voice, perfect in every way. I pressed my face against the window, searching the shadows. Then I saw him. A figure standing apart from the others, just at the edge of the light. He looked exactly like I remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing his old ranger jacket. Even the way he stood was right, weight on one leg, hands in his pockets. "Dad?" The word escaped before I could stop it. Hale grabbed my shoulder. "That's not him. Can't be." But I wasn't sure. What if my dad really had survived 3 years in Yosemite? What if he'd learned to live alongside these things, learned their ways? What if he really was out there calling his son home? "Cole, I know you're scared," the figure called. "I know you don't trust your own eyes anymore. But it's really me. I've been waiting for you to find me." Every instinct said to stay inside. Every protocol Hale had taught me said this was a trap. But it was my dad's voice. "I'm going out," I said. "The hell you are." Hale moved to block the door. "If there's even a chance that's really him," "There's not." "That's what they do, Cole. They find what you want most and they use it against you." "Then how do I know you're really you?" The words came out harsher than I intended. "How do I know you're not one of them, keeping me trapped in here while my dad's out there?" Hale's expression hardened. "Because if I was one of them, I'd let you walk out that door." We stared at each other. Outside, my dad's voice called again. "Cole, please. I don't have much time. They let me go to talk to you, but they won't wait forever." I looked at Hale, at his weathered face, his sad eyes, his obvious concern. This was a man who'd known my father, who'd risked everything to help me. This was real. But so was that voice outside. "I need to know," I said quietly. "I need to be sure." "Then we go together," Hale said. "But we follow protocol. We keep the cabin between us and them, and at the first sign of danger, we run." I nodded, and together we opened the door. The cold hit immediately, but it was nothing compared to the psychological weight of stepping outside. Every entity focused on us instantly, dozens of blank or half-formed faces turning in our direction. The figure at the edge of the light stepped forward. "Thank you for trusting me, son," he said. Up close, in the cabin's light, I could see him clearly. The resemblance was perfect. right down to the small scar over his left eyebrow from a camping accident when I was 5. This wasn't an approximation or a copy. This was pixel-perfect recreation. "How did you survive?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I learned their rules, learned to coexist. They're not monsters, Cole. They're prisoners, just like me, trapped by boundaries they didn't choose." He took another step forward. "I can teach you. We can stay here together, you and me, understanding them, finally giving them a voice. What do they want? To be free, to leave these reserves, to exist in the wider world without being hunted or feared." His voice was passionate, convincing. "Your grandfather helped create these reserves, Cole. He helped trap them here. We're responsible for their suffering." That detail stopped me cold. My grandfather had been a park ranger in the 1950s, part of the team that established boundaries for several reserves. But I'd never mentioned that to anyone. Not to Hale, not to anyone. "How do you know about my grandfather?" I asked carefully. The figure smiled. "I'm your father, son. Of course I know about my own dad." "Tell me his name." The smile faltered, just for a second, but enough. "What?" "My grandfather. Tell me his name." The figure's face remained perfect, but something behind the eyes changed. Some fundamental thing shifted, and I saw the truth. This wasn't my father. It never had been. It was something wearing my father's face like a mask. "I know you're not him," I said quietly. The thing that looked like my father tilted its head, studying me. Then, slowly, it smiled wider than any human mouth should go. "Smart boy," it said in my father's voice, "just like your dad." The other entities moved forward, closing the circle. Hale raised his shotgun, backing toward the cabin door. "Run," he said. "Now!" I ran. Behind me, I heard the shotgun blast once, twice, then Hale screaming, not in pain, but in rage, fighting. I wanted to turn back, wanted to help, but I'd promised. I'd promised to run. I sprinted into the forest, branches tearing at my face. Behind me, dozens of footsteps gave chase. They were fast, impossibly fast, but I'd studied the terrain. I knew where I was going. The reserve boundary was 2 miles north. I had to reach it. Had to cross that invisible line where their rules protected me. Something grabbed my jacket and I tore free, leaving the fabric behind. Another entity appeared to my right, pacing me, wearing the face of the hiker from Isle North Waters. I dodged left, nearly fell, kept running. A clearing appeared ahead, and I saw it. The boundary marker, a simple stone cairn that marked where Yosemite ended and public land began. So close. 100 yards. 50! The entity wearing my father's face appeared directly in front of me, blocking the path. I skidded to a stop, my lungs burning. "Where are you going, son?" it asked pleasantly. "Move," I gasped. "You can't leave. Not yet. We have so much to show you." Other entities emerged from the trees, surrounding me. I was cornered, 20 feet from freedom, with dozens of these things between me and the boundary. But I'd learned the rules. "You can't cross that boundary," I said. "None of you can." "True," the thing with my dad's face agreed. "But you're on this side, and you'll stay here until you understand." "Understand what?" It stepped closer, and I saw more details now. The skin was too smooth. The eyes, despite being the right color, had that animal reflectiveness in certain light. The proportions were perfect, but somehow wrong. "Your father understood," it said. "In the end, he understood what we are, what we need." "Where is he?" "Here. He's been here all along." The entity spread its arms, gesturing at the forest around us. "He's in the trees, the rocks, the water. He gave himself to this place, became one with it." "That's not possible, isn't it? You've seen what we can do. We consume, We copy, we become. Your father was special. His willpower, his determination. When we finally caught him, when he finally stopped fighting, we absorbed all of that. He's part of us now. Every entity in Yosemite carries a piece of Sam Marin. The implications crashed over me like a wave. My father wasn't dead. He was worse than dead. He'd been absorbed, his consciousness scattered across dozens of these things, trapped forever in a nightmare of partial existence. "I don't believe you," I said, but my voice shook. The entity smiled sadly. "He wanted you to know. That's why we've been calling you here. We can show you. Let you speak with the pieces of him that remain. You could be with your father again." It was a tempting lie, a beautiful, horrible lie. "No," I said firmly. "If my dad's really in there, he'd want me to run. He'd want me to survive." "Would he?" The entity's expression shifted, becoming harder. "Or would he want you to help us, to finally end our imprisonment? Your grandfather trapped us, your father understood us, and you could free us. I can't cross the boundaries, none of us can." "No, but you can change them. You're a photographer, you have a voice, you could tell the world about us. Change public perception. Eventually, change the laws." The entity stepped even closer, and I could smell something wrong, not decay exactly, but absence, like breathing in a void. "Help us, Cole. It's what your father would have wanted." Behind me, I heard more footsteps, more entities closing in. I was surrounded, and the boundary was still 20 feet away. Then, I heard Hale's voice from the cabin direction, weak but steady. "Cole, the rules." The rules. I'd learned them all. They couldn't cross boundaries. They couldn't enter human structures. They avoided fire. They could only mimic, not create. And they respected barriers, even invisible ones. I pulled off my belt and threw it toward the boundary marker. It landed 15 feet away, stretched across the invisible line. "That's my barrier," I said loudly, firmly, with all the belief I could muster. "The belt marks my boundary. You can't cross it." The entities stopped moving. Every one of them froze, like I'd flipped a switch. "That's not how it works," the thing with my dad's face said, but there was uncertainty in its voice now. "Isn't it? You said my dad's willpower was special, that his belief mattered." I stepped toward the belt, toward the boundary. "I believe in this barrier, just like I believe in the reserve boundaries. And if you really have pieces of my dad in you, then you know I'm telling the truth." The entity stared at me. Behind its eyes, I saw something shift, some calculation happening in whatever passed for its mind. Then, incredibly, it stepped back. "You're just like him," it said quietly. "Stubborn, strong, understanding the rules better than we do sometimes." I walked forward slowly, deliberately, toward my belt and the boundary beyond. The entities parted, creating a path. I kept my eyes forward, not looking at any of them directly. "If you see Sam again," the entity called after me, "tell him we miss him. Tell him his sacrifice meant something." I didn't answer. I reached my belt, picked it up, and kept walking. 10 feet later, I crossed the boundary marker and felt the change immediately. Like stepping from a freezer into sunshine, the psychological weight vanished. I turned back. The entities stood at the boundary, dozens of them, watching me. The one with my father's face raised a hand, the same wave I'd seen at Isle North Waters. Then, they faded back into the forest and were gone. I found Hale 20 minutes later, being treated by park rangers near the cabin. He was alive, but badly hurt, several deep gashes on his arms and torso. "You made it," he said, relief evident despite the pain. "Smart kid, just like your old man. What they said about my dad, probably lies. They lie as easily as they breathe." He winced as a ranger bandaged his arm. But the fact that you got out means the rules still hold. And if the rules hold, there's hope. We were airlifted out of Yosemite that night. I never went back. It's been 6 months since Yosemite. I quit wildlife photography and took a teaching job in Boston, as far from the reserves as I could get. I tried to put it all behind me, tried to forget. But 2 weeks ago, I got a package. No return address, postmarked from Yosemite National Park. Inside was a USB drive and a note in handwriting I recognized from old letters. My dad's. The note said, "Watch this, understand, help us." The USB contains video footage from a camera I didn't know existed, my dad's, from 3 years ago. I've watched it 17 times now, trying to understand what I'm seeing. It shows my father's final days in Yosemite. It shows him communicating with the entities, learning their language, their history. And it shows the moment he made his choice. He didn't die fighting them. He didn't get absorbed against his will. He joined them voluntarily. The final video entry shows my dad speaking directly to the camera. "Cole, if you're watching this, you made it further than I ever expected. You learned the rules. You survived. Now I need you to learn one more truth. These entities aren't trapped by accident. They were imprisoned deliberately 100 years ago because they knew too much. They understood something about reality that humans weren't supposed to know. And the people in power, they created the reserve system to keep that knowledge contained. I'm joining them to protect that knowledge until someone brave enough can handle it. That someone is you. The truth is in the ground beneath the reserve boundaries. Dig deep enough, and you'll understand why they can't cross. You'll understand everything. Be brave, son. Finish what I started." The video ends there. I don't know what to do. Part of me thinks it's another manipulation, another trick. But the handwriting is his. The voice is his. The mannerisms are his. And if there's any chance he's really out there, really chose this, really left behind a truth that needs protecting, I think I have to go back. I think I have to dig. But first, I'm writing this down. Putting it out there for someone to find. Because if I don't come back from this, someone needs to know the truth. The national parks aren't just preserving nature. They're preserving something far more dangerous. And my father died trying to understand what.